Hi everyone, my name is Joanna. Thanks for checking out my channel. This is part 2 of our son's birth story. In the first video, I introduced him, told you about him and his name, all those fun things, and then told you the story of how he was born. So if you want to check that out, I will put the video in the link below or up here if I am cool enough to do that. This is the story of a few days after he was born and a health issue we found out that he had and the crazy ride we went on as a result of that. So if you're interested in hearing that, then stick around. Okay, so if you saw my other video, you know that our son was born on December 16th, 2020, very early in the morning at 2:48 a.m. And yeah, after that, we got to spend some time with him and he was weighed, things like that. And if you've had a baby before or you've just heard stories, you know that the next day you've got people coming in and out, checking him for things. They did an ear test, different things like that. And as soon as they're comfortable with how you're doing and the baby's doing, they'll discharge you. Our son was looked at by a pediatrician and I am so thankful for him. I'm thankful for everybody in all of these stories, but he heard what he thought was a heart murmur. And that was a little bit concerning to me just because it was, you know, something abnormal, I should say. But my husband has a heart murmur. His brother, Theodore's uncle, has a heart murmur, and I knew that was a pretty common thing. So he said, you know, he heard what he thought was a heart murmur, but he decided to order an echocardiogram just to kind of investigate a little bit further. So someone came in and did an echocardiogram on our little guy, and a little while later, the pediatrician came in. Actually, 2 pediatricians came in. And he went on to tell us that our son had a congenital heart disease. And pretty much while he is explaining to me what it is, I am just kind of sitting there in shock. My husband is right there in the room with me. I look at him and then I look at the doctor and he just starts explaining things, and he gives me a piece of paper that sort of explains, you know, it does explain exactly what condition he thinks that our son has. Roll back the day before, we were debating staying a second night. Sometimes they will get you to stay a second night with a C-section or if they have a concern. But I remember the pediatrician saying he wanted to check something else on Theodore and it would help him out if we stayed an extra night. I kind of wanted to anyways, but I'm extra glad we did. So in this moment, I'm just kind of sitting there in the hospital bed. I don't think I'm holding Theodore. I think he's sitting in his bassinet, but I'm just kind of in shock, stunned. And I know that as soon as he leaves the room, I'm gonna cry. My husband knows this too, but I'm trying to keep myself composed and actually listen to what the pediatrician is saying. So he explains that our son has something called a bicuspid aortic valve. So typically in a normal heart, you have a tricuspid valve, which 3 pieces, flaps that open and close to let blood flow in and out. Theodore has a bicuspid, which means 2 of those valves are stuck together. He also has something called aortic stenosis, which means the valve is thinning. It's not as thick as it should be. So this results in blood rushing in faster than it should. So he's explaining this to me. I'm really not taking a whole lot in. I am just looking at him. He's trying to make jokes. I'm trying to kind of respond to them, and he's trying to keep it lighthearted. Yeah, I'm just in shock. So as soon as he leaves the room, I just lose it. I knew I was going to. I knew I was going to cry. My husband is wonderful. He is there comforting me, and we're trying to kind of wrap our heads around what this is. The doctor said that he was going to call Sick Kids, which is a hospital for kids in Toronto. So it's a couple hours from where we are. And he says he wants to send us there today. He is going to be in touch with someone from the cardiac unit and see if he can set that up and send us. So we're just kind of sitting there trying to process it and realizing that, okay, wow, we're going to get moved to another hospital. We're not going home today. Yeah, just here we go. I was really scared because I had, I had just given birth and I had really had no idea what this was. We were trying to understand what it was. I really didn't understand. thankfully there is another lady at our church whose son has this condition. He has even more conditions actually than our son does, and she was someone who really was helpful and helped me understand things and talked me through it. There's a lot of people that helped us out, and I'll talk about them as we go. But here we are in the hospital getting this news and knowing that, okay, we're not going home, we're going to another hospital because our son has this heart condition. The doctor comes back in and says he's arranged it. He was talking about maybe sending us in a helicopter, but they decided to send us in an ambulance. And he said that, they're going to check him again when they get there and verify, or confirm, I should say, that what the pediatrician at our hospital sees is what's going on. So they're going to do that, and then they might go ahead and do a procedure. This is, I don't know what the official word is called, but it's they put in a little balloon into the valve and try to open up the bicuspid valve so that it's not stuck together anymore. So, yeah, I still thinking back on it, I'm getting a little emotional. But where are we? Yeah, so we know we're gonna go to Sick Kids. The nurse comes in and tells us that typically when the ambulance arrives or the transportation teams arrives to get you, you only have about half an hour to get everything ready, and you're just kind of going. And they don't always know exactly when they're gonna arrive. So she said to kind of start getting ready. So my husband went down and got my prescription filled for medication that I needed to take after the C-section, and we kind of started to get things going. I pumped a little bit so we'd have a little bit on the way if the baby needed something. And yeah, we're still trying to process it, sending our family and friends messages to pray for us because we are just going on a crazy adventure. We were laughing because the theme in his room is let's go on an adventure, and we're like, why did we pick that as a theme? We did. It's not the adventure we wanted to go on. But okay, so my husband gets back upstairs from filling my prescription, and the nurse comes in and says, okay, the ambulance is here, we've got 15 minutes to get ready. And we're like, okay. So we're looking around the room, we're throwing stuff in our bags, I'm taking care of the baby, changing him, and I'm trying to get ready and get dressed to go along with him in the ambulance, and my husband's gonna follow in the car. We get out into the hallway where they're waiting for us, and I see this big stretcher, like an adult stretcher, and on the very end where the head goes is this red padding where the baby's gonna sit. So he's sitting on the top part of a stretcher. Now it's funny, at the time it was just very overwhelming. So Theodore gets put up on the stretcher, and they're trying to discharge me by going through all the questions that you'd normally be able to do, in your room calmly, but they're quickly trying to discharge me and then try and discharge Theodore. While he is on the stretcher, they look over at the heart monitor and his heart rate drops, and I just lose it again. I'm like, are we even gonna, sorry. I said to Liam, I don't know if I told him in the moment, but I told him in the past, there was a few times where I just thought we were gonna lose our son because it was his heart, and I had no idea what was going on, and it was just so scary to see him. We're finally getting ready to go, and in my mind, I'm like, we're not even gonna make it to the hospital. So his heart rate drops, and I'm just standing there in the hallway crying, and the two ambulance drivers who were amazing, I can't remember their names. They both had the exact same name, so it was like Steve and Steve, but it wasn't Steve. They both had the same name. They quickly call the doctor who is on their team and explain what happened, and the doctor said that it was okay, and they were reassuring them that he was okay to go ahead in the ambulance, because there was talk again of going in the helicopter, and for a brief moment there they revisited that, and they were like, should we go in the helicopter or should we just continue in the ambulance? But yeah, after talking to the doctor and their team and then seeing his heart rate settle down, they decided to go ahead and send us in the ambulance. It was crazy. We were leaving out the door and the nurse is like, wait, you gotta sign this. So Liam's trying to sign papers for Theodore as we're leaving, and it was just chaotic. But yeah, so Theodore and I get into the ambulance. Again, my husband is going to follow in the car. And yeah, they load him up and I sit in a chair at the back with one of the paramedics. He, again, is so nice. He's chatting with me the whole way through, and Theodore just sleeps the entire time, which was amazing because I was so scared. I'm like, what if he's awake and crying? You know, what am I gonna do? And so he slept the entire way. And this very, very kind paramedic chatted with me and just tried to keep me talking. I think he was, you know, trying to keep me calm and things like that. So we go to let's see this timeline. I wrote this down. So just for timeline, because how incredible they were with him, it was 11 o'clock-ish when we got the news that we had to go. And then we left at 12:30. And then we got to Sick Kids and he was in his procedure by 5 o'clock. So between 11 o'clock hearing the news, he was in the procedure that I'll explain at 5 o'clock, which is crazy. So, okay, so we get to Sick Kids. We get put into a room and they start kind of checking him out and they want to do the same tests to confirm that what our hospital sent us there for is what's going on. So they do that. We get called into the hallway and the surgeon is talking to my husband and I and explaining to us what they're gonna do. And we had to sign paperwork. And at that point, maybe earlier, I just had this feeling like that, oh my goodness, I'm a parent now. I'm in charge of this little guy and I'm signing paperwork for him to go into surgery. It was crazy experience. So they determined that yes, this is what he has and that they want to go ahead and do this balloon procedure today. So yeah, they decided he was stable with everything else was fine and he was stable enough to do surgery. So they are like, let's do it now. And yeah, and they took him, they kind of started getting him ready. He had to get an IV. Oh, that was hard for me to watch. And yeah, so my husband and I stayed in the room with him and then they took, what was I gonna say? So yeah, we kind of stayed in the room until they were ready to take him. And you know, we both had emotional moments at this point and we prayed together before he left. Woo, I'm gonna cry again. But yeah, my husband and I prayed for him before he left. And at this point, our family and friends knew and our church was praying for us and so many people were, and it was really incredible. I didn't necessarily know all the people at the time, but I definitely knew that people were praying, which was amazing. So he went into surgery. I think we followed him down into to the floor where he was going to get surgery. I had been walking around up until this point, which is not ideal after a C-section. So my husband made me get in a wheelchair and he wheeled me down. Again, the surgeon kind of explained what was going to happen, and then an anesthesiologist explained to us what that was going to look like for putting him under. They told us that, especially for babies this tiny, they can have trouble coming out of the anesthesia. So if he's not able to kind of wake up on his own, he's going to go into the cardiac intensive care unit. And as soon as he is stable there, then they would move him into a regular cardiac room. So, yeah, 5 o'clock. Hang on, let me double check. Yes, it was about 5 o'clock when he went in. I'm just reading messages we sent with our family for the timeline. But yeah, he went in at 5 o'clock and Liam and I went down to the cafeteria to eat and kind of wait for news. They actually had a really cool system that you could sign up for where you get alerts and you get just generic messages that like procedure has started, things are going as planned, things like that they would send you. So we were getting these updates as we went. And honestly, I don't even think they had told us it was going to be 2 hours, but it wasn't 2 hours. And we were both surprised at how fast we got the message that we could come. So Okay, so now we went back to where he was getting surgery, and they wheeled him out. We saw him. He was still asleep. He had a tube in his mouth and lots of things hooked up, and it was really hard to see him like that. But the first thing the surgeon said to us before we even saw Theodore, he came out, gave us a picture of his heart, and said, you know, this is for his scrapbook. He's doing fine, and was just so kind. So he gets sent into the intensive care unit, and we have to wait till he is ready for us to go and see him. That was really hard. That felt like a really long wait. I think it was a couple hours we were waiting to be able to go in and see him. Once we did, it was so hard for me to see him with, again, the tube in his mouth and all these things hooked up. He was still out from the anesthesia. We saw him, and then that night we couldn't stay with him because he was in the intensive care unit. So we both went home and to my mom's house. That was really, really hard leaving him because this little guy who I'd only had for less than 2 days, I all of a sudden had to leave in the hospital with just all these tubes hooked up to him and all these wires hooked up to him, I should say, which I knew were for a good purpose, but seeing him like that was just really hard. So yeah, we both said goodbye to him and went and slept at my mom's house. Okay, so the rest of the story I will speed up because I know it's gonna drag on. But the next day we went in, we were able to see him and talk to him, and they had called us during the night or during the evening to tell us the tube was out, which was wonderful. So we saw him, and I got to feed him shortly after we arrived, and that went really well. Later on that day, he was moved into the cardiac unit, and I think we spent 2 nights there, I want to say, because I was able to sleep there with him on a very uncomfortable bed. It's not meant for parents, but we did it. And yeah, so he continued to be monitored, which I'm so thankful for, by a wonderful team. His IV came out a bit too early. He actually pulled it out from wiggling in the intensive care unit, so that caused him to be dehydrated, so he wasn't having any bowel movements, and had been, in total it was 24 hours, but they were really concerned about that and sending him home. But yeah, we stayed there. My husband came in when he was allowed to, essentially, and stayed at my mom's overnight, and I stayed with him. And then yeah, we came home together in the morning on the 21st. It was crazy, and it was really hard, probably one of the hardest things I think we've gone through. But they were really happy with how the procedure went, and since then we've gone back for a follow-up appointment, and they're still happy with how it's doing. He may need to have the procedure again, or it may finish correcting itself. We're not sure, but we're so thankful for everybody at Sick Kids, as they're going to continue to follow him until he's 18, and then we'll kind of reevaluate from there. He might get sent to someone else who will keep following him, but this is something he's always going to have, and we're so thankful that it's not worse. There's so many other heart conditions that I'm learning about, that I'm hearing other people whose kids have. So we're so thankful that so far this is something that's manageable and something that won't necessarily, impede his life, but just something that needs to continue to be monitored. So yeah, that was our crazy story. And we're going to go back for a checkup again in a month from now. But we were just so thankful for every person that we were in contact with, from the people at the hospital where we gave birth at, to the people at Sick Kids, the people who transported us there, the paramedics. Everybody was so kind, and we really were in the best hands. We also know that God had Theodore in his hands, and I don't know if I can say this part without crying, but one of my friends had told me that one of my friends said that God is going to hold your baby when you can't. And that was especially special for me to hear that first night that I had to leave him. Sorry. Knowing that God was with him the entire way, especially the times that I couldn't be. And I know that it is because of our faith that we were able to get through a really difficult time. I know there were so many people praying for us and sending us messages and checking in on us, and they're still doing that now. And I'm just so thankful for the friends and family who just surrounded us with love and prayers. So if that was any of you, thank you very much. And I hope that anyone knows, if you have ever had to go through something similar like that, that there is a God who is there and wants to carry you through it. He did that for us, and he can do that for you. I know that not everyone believes the same thing as me. I totally understand that, but I do know that he was there for us in that moment, and so we're and so many other people were as well. So that's our crazy adventure story. So yeah, definitely an adventure we didn't want to go on, but we are thankful that God brought us through that. And yeah, so that is the second part to Theodore's birth story, the having surgery on the second day of coming into this world. It was crazy, but definitely a story that I wanted to share because there were so many wonderful things that came out of it, and I'm sure we'll continue to. But yeah, that's our story, and if you are interested in hearing other things about how he's doing, you can follow us on Instagram. I will leave that down below. Okay, so that is our story. I hope that I told it okay, and that it was an encouragement to someone out there. I will see you in my next video. Bye.